and welcome to my channel DevOps Mailer. This is Rohit Singh, and in this video tutorial we'll talk about Azure DevOps scenario based interview question, and this is the part 2. So all thanks to you all by putting your thoughts and in the comment box and asking me to create this part 2. This is for you guys. So based on all the comments, all the feedbacks and the emails which I've received from you guys, that motivated me for creating this part 2. So if you guys are new to this channel and if you're viewing this video for the very first time, please check the part 1 as well, because I have covered around 5-6 questions, scenario based interview questions over there as well. So again, I want to reiterate, this is not a straightforward interview question wherein I'm talking about what is DevOps, what is Agile. Over here, even the easiest question I'll be giving into a scenario, I'll be wrapping into a scenario and I'll be asking that questions. And post that, I'll be even demonstrating how exactly we can do it, we can achieve that part. Okay, so let's start without wasting much time. Let's start and let's move on to the second part of interview round. Okay, the first question, so it's written scenario 7 because I've covered 6 scenarios in my previous tutorial video, and you can find the link inside the description box. Okay, so the question is, we got multiple projects folder inside one repository XYZ. So the repository name is XYZ and we got multiple folders. So inside one repository I have multiple projects. Okay, and we have build pipelines created for each project. So each project has own separate build pipelines. So hence only that particular project build should be triggered automatically in which the changes were committed. So take an example, I have multiple folders. So just let's go back to Azure DevOps and let's understand this question first. So this is my DevOps. Let's go to the repository. So consider this is the repository, Shiva_web. This is one of my students' repository. Inside this, I have multiple folders. So consider this is one project, this is other project. And I have pipelines created, build pipelines created for both. I have build pipelines for this particular project. I have build pipelines created for this particular project. So what exactly the issue is over here, whenever the developer is making changes onto this particular branch, to the develop branch, both pipelines are getting triggered automatically. So how do we segregate this? So what exactly I want to achieve over here, when I make changes to this particular folder, only this particular pipeline should trigger. Same vice versa, if I'm making changes to this particular folder, only this particular pipeline should get triggered. How exactly we can achieve this? Let's go back to the PPT. So this can be achieved using path filtration. So I have got many query on this question. I've got multiple emails from you guys, so that is the reason I thought of including this into my scenario based interview questions. So there are two ways of achieving it. The one way is override trigger setting and specify the exact path for the build pipeline. One way. Let's go back and see that first. So let's go back to pipelines. In pipelines, consider this is the build pipeline which I'm talking about. So we'll go inside this pipeline. Let's do the edit. It's a YAML based pipeline which I'm using right now. So the first option, go into triggers. In triggers, there's option override YAML continuous integration trigger from here. Click over here. There is an option path filtration at the very bottom. So what you have to do, go inside, add a path filter, and let's go back to repos first and this folder. Just copy this folder name, come back over here. You can have this added this way. So what will happen now when I save it? What will happen now? Whenever there's a commit in this particular folder, for this particular folder, then only this particular build pipeline will automatically trigger, or else it will not trigger. Okay, this is one way of achieving this. The other way is mention the path field in the YAML file of the build pipeline. So this way, even in the YAML directly, you can mention the information. The same thing I can mention in the YAML. I don't have to come over here and add triggers and things like that. Okay, even though this is very helpful, very straightforward, there are other ways of doing things as well. Let's talk about that as well. So if you go inside this same build pipeline again, go and edit. Now if you see this, in the trigger, I have added a path as well, included the path. This way also you can do. So by doing this, this becomes part of your repository. So because you're updating the YAML file. So this will make sure that when there's a change in the develop branch and when there's a change in this particular folder, only then this particular build pipeline to trigger. As simple as that. Okay. So that's it for so that's the solution for this scenario. Let's go back and see the other scenario. Scenario 8. So the question is, we have multiple build pipelines and those builds are sequential in nature and directly dependent on each other. Okay, let's understand this question. We have multiple builds, so one build is dependent on each other build. So like one build, so once ABC build is completed, then only the XYZ build should run. That is what the question is. So how do we achieve the same in Azure DevOps? Okay, straightforward. Let's go back to Azure DevOps. Let's consider this. Take this as a build Shiva underscore web app underscore build develop. This build is directly dependent on other build Shiva underscore web app underscore feed. So when this feed build is successful, then only this particular build should run automatically. How exactly we can achieve it? Let's see that. Let's go back to PPT. So we can achieve it by using build completion. Okay. So again, under triggers, there's an option build completion and select the triggering build post completion. So this, let's go back and see. Again, there are two ways of doing it. One is by doing through triggers, or the other way of adding the line of code in the YAML file. Okay, let's go back and see the manual way first. Okay, so what is my requirement? I want this particular pipeline, this Shiva underscore web app underscore build to trigger automatically when this Shiva underscore web app underscore feed is completed. Okay, let's go and see that. So for doing that, I have to make changes in Shiva underscore web app. So I'll go inside it, I'll go and edit, I'll go and go back to triggers again. There's an option of build completion. Build when another build completes. Okay, don't get confused. People tends to get confused over here. Don't get confused. So I want to run this build when the other build is completed successfully. Okay, let's add it. So the build which it is, this particular build is dependent on this particular build, Shiva web app underscore feed, and branches develop. That's totally fine for me. I'll just save it. So let's test this as well. So what I'll do, I'll go in Shiva web app and I'll just run this build quickly. So hardly it will take 10 seconds or 15 seconds to complete this build. So what my expectation is, once this build is successful, this particular build should run automatically. That is what my expectation is. Let's wait. Let's refresh this. So it's a simple build which is pushing a NuGet package into my artifacts. So that's it. Now let's refresh it. See this. So this build was automatically triggered. This got triggered because we have this particular build was successfully created and this particular build has a direct dependency on this particular build. So this is how this is running right now. Okay, same way, let me cancel it, not needed right now. Same way, there's other way. You can even update a pipelines field the way we have created a pipeline field in my previous, we had a path field. So same way we can have a pipeline field added into my YAML file. Okay, so if you understand this YAML, so there is a pipeline called app.ci which is dependent on security-lib-ci. When this source build is successfully created, then the app-ci pipeline will automatically build. Try this by yourself. If you have some difficulty or issue, do let me know in the comment box. Okay, now the scenario 9. How to restrict a developer by not allowing him to push any messy commit history into a remote repository like remote branch like developer release from his her feature branch. So take a developer scenario. Being a developer, you will create a local branch for yourself, okay, wherein you'll do all your development work, all your development activities. So while doing it, you'll have multiple commits. Okay, so you'll have around 100 200 commits. So if you push everything into develop, so your develop history will look very messy. So I have covered this scenario in a different way in my previous tutorial, okay, in my previous part. But over here, it's different. Okay, so how do we restrict? So the question is, how do we restrict the user, the developer? Okay, because if he tends to push everything into develop, the develop branch history will be very messy, and there are so many other developers working on that particular branch. So how do we restrict? So the best way of restricting is by enforcing branch policy. Okay, so how exactly we can achieve it? So the question, by enforcing branch policies on branches, making sure only specific types of merge is permitted. Okay, so in this scenario, if I enforce a branch policy that whenever there is a PR, that's a pull request created from a feature branch to a develop or a release branch, only squash merge should be permitted to the developer, nothing else he can do. So by doing that, we can achieve this scenario. How exactly that can be done? Let's go back and see. So in repos, so come back into branches. If you see this in develop, there is an option. Click on more option. Come over here in the branches policy. In this, if you come down, there are other branch policies also which you can enforce. I'm not talking about those right now. So we are talking about limited merge types. In this, I can enforce that only squash merge is permitted. So when the developer is creating a PR, at that time, during the completion, he will just get an option of squash merge. All other merge type would be restricted. By doing this, you can enforce branching policy, and developer would be forced to use only squash merge. That is what this question is all about. Enforcing, restricting the developer to use only a specific type of merge commit. Okay. Depending upon your scenario, depending upon your questions which you're getting, you can tweak this question and you can tweak your answer. Okay. If someone is asking like how do we enforce basic merge type, same way. Okay. How do we make sure that there are limited set of reviewers? You can come and enforce branch policy. How do we make sure that the work items are linked? Okay. Depending upon questions, you can tweak your answers. Okay. Let's come back to the next scenario. Scenario 10. Consider I have multiple commonly used pipeline variables. This could be a build pipeline also, or it could be a release pipeline also. How do I make sure those variables are defined once and reused or referenced in multiple pipelines whenever required? So understand this question, we have pipeline variables. So there are multiple pipeline variables which are commonly used across multiple pipelines. So one way is you go and define those pipeline variables in the pipeline section manually, but that is very clumsy. Okay, so you're talking about automation and doing manual things again and again for commonly used tasks. Let's go back on Azure DevOps and see that. Okay, consider these are my release pipelines. If I go inside this pipeline, I have multiple variables created, and there are so many common variables also I have created. So among this, there are some common variables which I would be using in multiple other pipelines as well. If it is one or two pipeline, there's no need. But if it is around 100 200 pipelines wherein you're using those common variables, so it doesn't make sense of going and adding in each pipelines. So how do we achieve it? So let's go back and see. Okay, this can be achieved using variable group. Okay, so by creating a variable group and defining commonly used variables. Great. How exactly we can do it? Let's go back and see. So inside pipeline, there's an option called library. Okay, if you guys don't know, inside library, there is an option of creating a variable group. You can give a name to this variable group, and you can have this commonly used variables created and the values mentioned right over here. After doing this, for example, I have a variable group created over here. So I have three variables: environment, resource group, service plan. These are the three variables and the values which I have given over here. Now if I go back into my releases, let's take an example of this. If I edit this and if I want to use those commonly created variables inside my pipeline, the easiest way is go inside variable groups. There's an option to link. If you click on link, you can select, you can link it. Now if you just select the drop down, here we go. All those variables which we have created inside the library, it is part of my pipeline now. So this is I have added into one pipeline. Similarly, if I want to add it into some other pipeline, let's take an example of this. I can simply go in variable group and select it. You can select even you can even select based on stages. Okay, so if you have multiple stages inside your pipeline, you can even select based on stages, but for now I'm just selecting it for release. Here we go. So it's been added into two pipelines. So this is the best way. So this will work only if you have a commonly used variables across pipelines. Okay, then only you can go ahead and use this option. There's a very important feature of variable groups which you will be using a lot. Variable groups can be even used to link secrets from an Azure KeyVault as variable. So this is very classic example. Okay, now if I go back, if you see this, I can link my Azure KeyVault directly. So the classic example is, suppose you have a database. You're deploying things into your database. Okay, so you'll be using SQL database passwords. So definitely you'll not put that password directly into your pipeline as a plain text. Again, if you're doing it, it's a security breach. Never do it. So what is the best way? You can create a key vault. You can put your password in the key vault, and you can directly link that particular key vault as a variable group. Okay, when you're doing it, so definitely that database password you'll be using for multiple other pipelines. That's a commonly used variable which we are talking about right now. So the easier, once you create and once you link, you can directly start adding your database variable, your database password variable inside your pipeline. And using a Azure Key Vault task, you can download that password from the Key Vault directly. So that is a classic example of using variable group. Okay, and this is a very important question on security. How do you secure passwords in pipeline or any sensitive information in pipelines, and how do you reference those into your pipelines? Okay, these are I can eventually make 5-6 questions on this part also. Okay, but these are the example these are the questions which would be asked about security. Okay, remember that, guys. Okay, let's go move back. Okay, so again a scenario 11. Consider I have a multiple commonly used pipeline task. Okay, the question is different over here. We have commonly used pipeline task. How do I make sure those tasks are created and defined once and reused or referenced in multiple build or release pipelines whenever required? Okay, so in the previous question we have commonly used variables. Now I have commonly used task. Okay, let's go back and see. Okay, so that can be achieved. Let's see how exactly we can achieve it. That can be achieved by using task groups. So basically, you're grouping one or more commonly used tasks in a task group. Okay, so what is the benefit of doing that? We can manage the task from a central location if there's a changes, and we can call or reference that task very easily. How exactly we can achieve it? Let's see that. So I have a task group created under pipelines. I have a task group created. So basically I'm building a .NET application using this task group, wherein I have a NuGet installer, NuGet restore, building the solution, then publishing the artifact. This is what this example task group is doing. How exactly this is created? Let's see first. Now let's go back to releases. Leave this. Let's take an example of this pipeline itself. Okay. Now how exactly this is, if you want to create a task group. So I have a task of, there are two tasks, like it's a ARM template. I don't know if it's a relevant scenario to give you. And this is a deployment template, what you have. So this is just how do we create a task group. This is not a relevant example, I think. So if you want to create a task group, just highlight both the task, whichever task you want to create, right click, there's an option to create a task group. Okay, you can give a name to this task, you can give a description, you can select the category, and you can select the variables, and you can give the default values of those variables. Okay, this is how you can create a task group. Let's go back to the previous task which was created, and this is how, once the task group is created, this is how it will reflect inside the task group section. Okay, if you want to manage, if you want to change anything, you can directly do it from here. And once you do it, it will replicate wherever you're using this particular task. Okay, and this particular task was created based out of this one. So this was a task which is, so that four tasks has been clubbed together as one single task over here, and which is doing this exact same thing which is mentioned inside the task group. And how do you reference those task group inside your uh, the task which you have created? What is the name of the task? ASP.NET build. How do you reference? If you want to reference this inside a build, you can easily do it by creating a build or release. So let's create a build. Just select randomly. Okay, over here I just select empty job for now. So I have a task group with the name ASP.NET. So I'll just click on plus. I'll just look for it, ASP.NET. See this, ASP.NET created by DevOps Mela. This is something I have created. So if I want to reference those tasks directly, here we go. So four tasks, we earlier had four tasks. It's all clubbed together into one single task. And whenever you want to call it, it's very easy to call those tasks inside a build or a release pipeline. Okay. So this is all about task group. And one important thing about task groups are only available in a classic model. In YAML, you cannot use task group. Remember that. So that's it from this part, guys. So it was, do let me know how did you like the video. Put it in the comment box if you want more parts, and do let me know if you want any other topics like Terraform, Kubernetes, Ansible, Docker, interview questions on those, a similar type of interview questions on those topics. Do let me know in the comment box. And if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching DevOps, and thank you for supporting. Goodbye.